go live button, and then hopefully you won't have to hear from me for the rest of this meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. You did great.
All right, seems to be good.
Are we set?
Yep, seems all good.
Okay. Well, thanks, Chris. And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority's April meeting. Sorry for the slight delay, a few technical issues, but I think we're up and running now. So again, welcome to everyone. Looks like our spring weather's returned, and it's good to see. And the month of April is just about gone, unfortunately. So just a few quick reminders. We are starting today with a short meeting. First of all, we're meeting as a Source Protection Authority. And then following that, we will have our regular board meeting. Welcome today to Tracy Annett to her first board meeting as our general manager. Tracy's certainly no stranger to us and to the board and board meetings, but this is the start of a new era here, and hopefully just the first of many meetings to come with Tracy as our new general manager. So looking forward to that. Just a reminder that Chris Harrington is our host. If you have any issues at all, contact him through the chat feature, and I'm sure he'll be able to get things sorted out for you. Also, some quick reminders to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. That way we can cut down on the background noise and echo. Have your participant and chat windows open, and use your raised hand feature. And we'll be doing all the votes as normal by roll call. Again, we'll have predetermined movers and seconders, and I'll just ask for confirmation each time to make sure that mover and seconder are okay with that. And a reminder that today's meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the UTRCA's YouTube channel. And this is part of our requirement to allow public viewing of proceedings. Our First Nation to Territorial greeting. We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Luepiaq peoples, who have a long-standing relationship to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and the Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island. Regarding regrets for today's meeting, I will inform the board that we have received a resignation. Don Edmonston has resigned from the board effective immediately. County of Oxford staff are working with the townships of East Tavistock and Blandford Blenheim to find a replacement for Don, but we have not heard anything yet on his replacement. But I believe that due to the pandemic, Don's work schedule has changed and he's finding it difficult to attend the meeting. So it's my understanding that's the reason. And unfortunately, Don has resigned from the board. I don't have any other regrets. So with that, I'm going to ask Michelle to do the roll call, please.
Mary Blosh,
Present.
Alan Dale,
Present.
Anna Hopkins,
Here.
Tony Jackson,
Here.
Sandy Levin,
Here.
Nancy Manning,
Here.
Hugh McDermott,
Here.
Paul Mitchell, it looks like Paul's not here. I didn't see him on the list. Anna Marie Murray,
I'm here.
Brian Petrie,
Present.
Jim Reffel,
Jim was here at one time.
I did hear the sound of someone getting disconnected just now. It must have been Jim.
Yeah, Jim was the very first one in this morning, but I don't see him right now.
Okay. So Joe Salter,
Here.
Mark Schadenberg,
Here.
Alex Westman.
Here.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Sounds like we have 12 board members anyway, and hopefully Jim's able to rejoin us, and that'll give us 13.
I just
Okay.
let Jim back in.
Oh, there's Jim's back. Okay, good. So with that, we will move on then with our first meeting here. We have the Resource Protection Authority meeting. First item we have is the adoption of the agenda. And moved by Marie and seconded by Anna that the members approve the agenda as posted. Is that okay with Marie and Anna?
Yes. Yes, so moved.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions at all on the agenda? Not seeing or hearing anything, so I'll call for the vote then on the adoption of the agenda. And Michelle, could you do the roll call, please?
Mary Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes?
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Next item we have is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, and that was about a year ago, April 28th, 2020. So
So moved. Yep.
moved by Tony. Sandy is seconding that.
Seconded.
Thank you. So any comments or questions at all from the minutes, April 28th, 2020? I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so I will ask Michelle to do the roll and we'll call for the vote.
Mary Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott.
Yes.
I see Paul's name up there, so I'll call Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. And yeah, it looks like we're up to 14 board members now, so that's good. Item number 3 then on the agenda, business for approval. 3.1 is the ratification of the elected position. It's a pretty straightforward report there from Jenna, just ratifying Joe's appointment to the committee. And so if Nancy would like to move that and Hugh would second that, please.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, thank you. The Source Protection Authority approved the recommendations presented in the report. As I said, it's pretty straightforward. Any comments or questions at all on that motion? Not seeing or hearing anything, so I'll call for the vote. Michelle, if you could do the roll, please.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins.
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schradenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. And thanks, Joe. We certainly appreciate the work that you do on that committee, and just a formality we go through here to ratify it, but certainly keep up the good work, and thank you for serving on that committee. Next item is 3.2, Drinking Water Source Protection Annual Progress Report. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenna, and she can give us some of the highlights from her report and touch on some items. So Jenna?
Great. Good morning. I think Chris is going to share a slide presentation that I prepared. So we generally only meet as a Source Protection Authority when a decision is required. And so today we're talking about the 2020 Annual Progress Report. So it is a lengthy report that was in your meeting packages. There's a lot of information in it. So I did prepare this slide presentation just to kind of summarize some of the contents of that report, and I'll go through it fairly quickly. I know you've got a full meeting ahead of you. So I'll go through it quickly, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them at the end. So Chris, next slide.
It's not, sorry, it's
Yeah,
not moving on mine. I still got the first slide.
Yeah, I've hit it a few times. I was just expecting it all of a sudden to go about 3 slides ahead. So there. At the next one, right? It's going to be
There
one
you
of those
go.
days.
Great. Okay, so the Clean Water Act requires us as a Source Protection Authority to prepare this report and submit it annually to the Director of the Source Protection Programs Branch at the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. We're also required to submit the report to our Source Protection Committee a minimum of 30 days before the submission deadline, which is May 1st of every year. So the report has to describe the measures that have been taken to implement the policies in the Source Protection Plan. It's intended to describe the results of any monitoring programs and describe the extent to which the objectives set out in the plan are being achieved. So December 31st marked the 5th year that our plans have been in place for 5 years of policy implementation, and this is our 4th annual progress report that we'll be submitting. So next slide. So as I said, this has to go to our Source Protection Committee 30 days prior to the submission deadline. So our committee reviewed it at their meeting on March 26th. And if they have comments they would like to include in the report, we as a Source Protection Authority are required to include that. So I'll get to that a little bit later in our presentation, what the committee's comments were. So next slide. So in terms of how we collect the information contained in the report, every policy in our Source Protection Plan contains a corresponding monitoring policy, which basically says that everyone that's responsible for implementing policies must report to us, the Source Protection Authority, by February 1st each year about their actions that have been taken in the previous calendar year to implement the policies. So we do this through an electronic reporting tool. It's online. So it's basically, there's several provincial ministries, all of our municipalities and our risk management officials log into this online portal and answer a series of questions to submit their information. So next slide. So we take all of the information that gets submitted to us and we produce these annual reports. So there's two pieces of the report. The first part, both are included in your meeting package. The first report is our public facing report. After we submit on May 1st, we post this publicly online. And then there's also the supplemental forms, which are also included in your package, but they are not public documents. So they contain a lot of the background information that the public report is built on, and we submit that to the ministry so that they have that information. Next slide. So the biggest question we usually are looking at is, have our policies been implemented? So all of the policies in the plan, have they been implemented yet? We have two sets of policies. Oxford County chose to write their own policies. So there's a volume of our plan that contains policies that are specific to Oxford County, and there's 80 of those policies total. And then we have another volume which contains the policies for everywhere else in the Thames-Sydenham region, and there's 94 of those policies. A lot of the policies are very similar. There's just a few differences in some of the policy approaches that have been taken. So next slide. But when it comes to evaluating if the policy has been implemented, it's a lot more complicated than just taking those 174 policies that we have and saying, you know, have they been implemented or have they not? Because a lot of the policies are directed at multiple implementers. So some of our policies name provincial ministries, municipalities, risk management officials, something like our general education and outreach. Policies are targeted to the conservation authorities, municipalities, provincial ministries, so lots of implementers named, and some of them address multiple types of drinking water threats, and some of them are addressing both existing and future threats. So we often have to take the policies themselves and tease them apart to really look at, you know, which aspects of the policy have been implemented or not. So the province kind of does that for us through our reporting tool back up to the province. And so you can see these are our legally binding policies that address significant drinking water threats. And you can see the total there is 409. So we've taken a lot of the policies and teased them apart to evaluate the implementation status. So 80% of those policies that are targeting significant threats, which are legally binding, have been fully implemented. We have another 16% that are in progress, and another 4% where they may not be applicable. So next slide. So we have another set of policies that address significant threats, but they're not actually legally binding. And those ones are basically fully implemented. It's 84% that have been fully implemented and 16% where they may not be applicable. So next slide. And then we have another set of policies that are targeted at moderate and low threats. Again, they're not legally binding policies, and we haven't made quite as much progress on these ones. So we've got 81% which are fully implemented and another 19% which are in progress. So next slide. Oh, right, sorry, we've got another set of policies also that address other types of things which aren't specific to a specific threat activity. So we have some policies targeted at transport pathways, and then I mentioned before we have some general broader education and outreach policies. Here again, we're at 67% fully implemented, 30% in progress, and 3% not applicable. Next slide. So a bulk of our policies are our risk management plan policies. So this is a new tool that was created under the Clean Water Act. The responsibility lies with municipalities who are required to hire or designate a staff person as a risk management official. And that individual will go out and meet with a person that's engaged in a threat activity and negotiate a management plan to reduce the risk that's posed by that activity. So they're unique property specific plans that are negotiated between an individual and a risk management official. So that's where the bulk of our policies lie. So I was going to spend a bit of time on this slide. I've highlighted some things in different colors here. We have a total of 62 risk management plans that have been established since the plan took effect. And I messed up the total at the bottom there. It says 2, but there are actually 6 risk management plans. 6 of those 62 were established in 2020, so in this past calendar year. And those plans are in place on 58 properties, and they manage 121 significant drinking water threats. So the lines that I've highlighted in orange are where a municipality has delegated their authority back to the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. So you may already be aware that we provide risk management services as a service to many of our member municipalities. So this gives you an idea. We provide that service for 11 municipalities currently. I left London on there, but they have decommissioned both of their backup groundwater supply wells and no longer are required to implement these types of policies. So we were providing that service up until the time when those systems got decommissioned. So I left that there, but we aren't actually providing service to the City of London anymore. As of December 31st, we had been providing the service to Perth South, but that's been transferred back over to the municipality. And you can see the Essex Region Conservation Authority also provides services for some of the municipalities that are closer to their region over in the west side of our region. I've highlighted a couple of our municipalities in green where we just haven't seen the progress that we're expecting to see out of those municipalities. Oxford County is the lead on risk management policies. So they have a risk management official at the county level who is responsible for negotiating all of the risk management plans required in Oxford. They have quite a number of municipal groundwater systems, a number of threats, quite a lot of threats that they have to address. And they, at this point, only have 4 risk management plans in place. So they've had some staff turnover there. It's a little bit more complicated implementing the policies in Oxford County. So we are expecting those numbers to go up in the next couple of years, but we haven't really seen the progress there that we may have hoped for in our first 5 years. And then again, in Thames Centre, they are doing their own risk management work and they haven't established any risk management plans to date. So we do have a few concerns about that. We're trying to work closely with their staff to kind of get things rolling for them to address some of their threats and get some plans in place. So next slide. So another part of a risk management official's job is to review development applications for development that's happening in vulnerable areas around drinking water systems to ensure that no drinking water threats are proposed as part of that development application. And if they are, then they may either need to be prohibited or a risk management plan needs to be developed. So this slide's just showing you where risk management officials reviewed applications this year. So only 10 across the region total, and only 3 of which required a risk management plan. So the application can't proceed until a risk management plan is established. So that's kind of a first step that has to happen before either a building permit or a planning application can be approved. Next slide. Again, there's a number. Risk management officials are required to report on the number of inspections they're doing. So section 57 is for activities that are prohibited. And we saw 19 of those types of inspections conducted in 2020. And then where a risk management plan is required, there were 67 inspections done. So this is about half of what we saw for inspections in 2019. And really, it has everything to do with the pandemic that happened in 2020. So most risk management officials stopped all inspection work last spring when the pandemic first started, and really didn't start to resume activities until the summer months. And even then, a lot of inspections that were done were kind of a drive-by or, an outdoor in-person socially distanced inspection. So our risk management officials have reported that, 2020 has been a difficult year to really engage people in risk management planning. Most of our risk management plans are done with businesses, and many businesses have just been working hard to try and maintain their business and have had a hard time really trying to work on a risk management plan at the same time. So our risk management officials have been understanding of that and have been trying to persevere where they can, but it has been a challenging year to try and make progress in addressing some threats through risk management planning. Next slide. And there's a number of provincial ministries that report to us directly. They have in past years indicated that they have addressed all of their existing threats through the prescribed instruments that they have the approval authority for. So these are things like waste threats, sewage threats, where an environmental compliance approval is required. So the policies basically require those provincial ministries to go back in where a threat's been identified, review existing instruments and amend them where necessary to reduce risk to drinking water. So those previously issued instruments have all been screened, reviewed, and actions taken. In terms of new applications coming in, the province only reported to us that only 2 new applications underwent detailed screening for source protection, one from OMAFRA and one from MECP in the Hauled Sewage Division. And only one of those, the OMAFRA NASM plan, required a threat to be managed through conditions in the approval. Next slide. So we have 18 municipalities that are required by our source protection plan to amend their official plan, and 22 that are required to complete a zoning bylaw conformity exercise. We do have some work to do in this area. We have a number that have started but haven't completed yet. And so we want to, spend some time in 2021 this year supporting our municipalities to get these exercises completed. So we've done better with official plans with 9 completed and 8 in progress. But we've only completed 2 zoning bylaw conformity exercises and 14 are in progress. So we've got some work to do there that we're hoping to try and address this year. Next slide. We also have a policy in the plan recommending that municipalities and the Ministry of Transportation install these drinking water protection zone signs where a provincial highway, a local or county road crosses a vulnerable area. So we didn't see any of these signs go up this past year, but we do have a total of 163 across the region. So I think most of our municipalities have done this now. We saw good uptake on that policy, and there's quite a few signs out there now. So I'm not expecting to see too many more go up. Next slide. So one of the other policies in our plan requires that municipalities undertake mandatory septic inspections every 5 years where a septic system is identified as a significant drinking water threat. So this is actually a building code requirement, and our policy basically reiterates the requirement under the building plan. And we originally identified 249 septic systems located in 8 municipalities within our region. Most of our municipalities have completed the first round of inspections and are starting to plan for the next round. So I think we have 1 municipality that did inspections in 2016, so they'll be undertaking new inspections, their second round of inspections this year. But most of our municipalities undertook the first round in 2017, 2018. So we're not expecting to really see the second round of inspections to get going until 2022 and 2023. Oxford County and the City of Stratford are still needing to complete their first round of inspections. So we're working with them to try to really get them moving on these inspections this year. There was only 2 systems that were actually inspected in 2020, and those were done in Chatham-Kent. So next slide. We do have a number of identified drinking water issues. One is a microcystin issue for the Wheatley and Chatham South Kent intakes. It's just something that we are monitoring, and our observation is that there's been no change in the concentration or trend of this issue. In Wallaceburg, we identified a nitrate issue, which we are no longer monitoring. We've worked with the municipality who is no longer concerned, and we have monitoring report that doesn't really support monitoring data, which doesn't support this as an issue. So we're in the process of removing that as an issue from our plans and assessment reports. So the other issue is a nitrate one for the Woodstock drinking water system. And the municipality reported there isn't enough data or information there yet to determine whether that issue is changing. So next slide. So overall, we had, when the plans were first approved, we had 1,055 threats, significant drinking water threats that were identified throughout the Thames-Sydenham region. We've had 73 additional threats added since that time. And 446 of those 1,055 have been confirmed to no longer exist. So they've been removed, and another 324 that have been addressed through policy implementation. So we still have 358 threats that need to be addressed. So our overall progress is 48% in terms of addressing the existing threats. But there is a little bit of uncertainty in this data. We originally had all of the threat location data from our analysis when the plans were first approved, but we no longer collect location data for threats. And some of the threat data that gets reported to us has had some inconsistencies in it. So we continue to work with our program partners who report to us to improve how this information gets reported and communicated. And we're hoping that 48% will go up in 2021, and we'll have some more confidence in that number itself. Next slide. So as I said, our Source Protection Committee reviewed this report on March 26th, and these are their comments. I know it's a little small and hard to read, but essentially the committee feels that to date, we've, 5 years in, we've implemented 80%, fully implemented 80% of the policies that address significant drinking water threats, with the remaining 20% progressing well. And we may not have seen the progress we might have hoped for in 2020, but a lot of that is pandemic related. And we still, managed to make a little bit of progress despite the difficult year. So even though there's still considerable amount of work to do to address the existing threats, the ones that were originally identified, that 1,055, we still got ways to go. The committee feels we've made some good progress and that we're on target. So that's the message from your Source Protection Committee to include in the plan, or in the report, sorry. And next slide. So the recommendation from staff is that you, as the Source Protection Authority, direct staff to submit this report to the Source Protection Programs branch for the May 1st deadline.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. First of all, can I get Paul to move that recommendation, and Anna Marie to second that, please?
So moved.
So seconded.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions at all for Jenna on her report? I see some hands up here. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jenna. This is Clean Water Act established the Drinking Water Source Protection Program, and that's funded by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Has funding changed over the years that has had an impact on the work that we do?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We've seen our funding levels significantly decrease, I would say, over the last 5 to 10 years. But, we still get a considerable amount of funding for this program from the province. And our responsibilities through that funding are to support our local municipalities in implementing the source protection plan policies, as well as to update, monitor and update our source protection plans and assessment reports where required, and complete this annual reporting and support our source protection committee. So, that funding is not to implement any of the policies in the plan. So there was funding early on when our plans were first approved to support small rural municipalities in implementing policies, but now the funding for implementing the policies themselves rest on the policy implementers.
And through the chair, the policy implementers are the municipalities?
For the most part, yes.
Speaking of municipalities, it seemed Oxford, from your report, has some work to do yet. Are we comfortable with the progress to date and the progress that'll be made in the short term and long term from Oxford?
Yeah, I mean, I did highlight them because we have a few concerns about the progress that's been made to date. We would have liked to see them be a little bit further ahead than they are right now. Since they're doing this at the county level, they have one risk management official who's had 2 maternity leaves in the last 5 years. So she's currently on maternity leave right now and will be returning in May. The first maternity leave, they tried to hire a replacement risk management official, which didn't work out very well for them. So with this maternity leave, they chose not to replace their risk management official and instead just put a pause on their risk management work while she's been off. She has been working part-time to screen new applications that are coming in. But otherwise, they've just put a pause on their program completely. So they've assured me that once she comes back in May, they're going to really try and hit the ground running. Things are a little bit more complicated for them. They fall into multiple source protection areas. And so they have 4 source protection plans that they're trying to follow. They did take the lead on writing a lot of their policies. So they have consistent policy throughout. But they still, their reporting requirements are quite onerous in that they have to report to 4 different source protection authorities every year. So they have to kind of track everything on a watershed basis. And so that kind of adds a level of complexity to what they're doing. And they have a lot of drinking water systems and lots of threats to address. So they took some time to get their program kind of established. And then once they kind of got their risk management program established, they've had some staffing, I guess, just gaps in terms of, getting things rolling. But I think, they've assured us that they are planning to try and get quite a bit done in 2021. And I think we will see significant progress from them in the next couple of years.
Okay. One last question, Mr. Chair. I noticed the number of threats remaining is 358 seems like a large number. Is it really? I mean, I see we've made a lot of progress. Are there any of those 358 that require any action or immediate attention by this committee?
I don't think so. Many of those are meant to be addressed through our risk management plan policies, and both the Oxford County risk management policies and the remaining Thames Sydenham risk management policies didn't specify a date. So many source protection plans across the province required a date to address existing threats through risk management plans. So it was typically 5 years. So 5 years from when your plan first took effect, you had to address all existing threats through your risk management plan policies. You had to get those risk management plans in place. And for a lot of areas, the pandemic has really hampered that progress. So a lot of source protection committees have had to go back and change their policy to extend that deadline. because they were sort of on track. They might have been on track to get the plans in place in those 5 years, but then, 2020 came around and the pandemic has kind of hampered their efforts. So fortunately, we haven't had to do that because we didn't put any time frame in place. So we aren't kind of handcuffed by that 5-year time frame, but we are looking at changing our policies to add a time frame in now. So I think, we've discussed it with our source protection committee and felt that, we're 5 years in. We do have, a couple of municipalities where we haven't seen the progress we'd like to see. So we're looking at trying to add a time frame in to help motivate them to get those risk management plans in place. But I will say that if you recall from that original 1,055, we eliminated something like 400 of those threats because they weren't, they were found to not be existing. So that original threats assessment was done largely as a desktop exercise. And so once risk management officials have been able to get out on the ground and go and confirm those threats, they don't actually meet the circumstances which are set out by the province that constitute a significant drinking water threat. So they don't actually exist. So I expect that those remaining 350 something, whatever it is, a lot of those probably won't exist. I'm expecting in Oxford County, we'll probably see around maybe 60 risk management plans. And I think for Thames Center, where we haven't seen any risk management plans, I expect them to be similar to some of our other municipalities like St. Mary's and Stratford, where we've seen kind of 10 to 20 risk management plans being established. So I'm expecting the same kind of thing there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Joe, you're next.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Jenna and her group for all the efforts they put in keeping this going during difficult times. I know the Source Water Protection Committee appreciates all the efforts.
Good. Well, thank you. And yes, we certainly owe them a lot of gratitude. This program has been up and running for a long time and they've made a lot of progress. And as you had mentioned and Jenna mentioned, it was we still had some work to do, but unfortunately 2020 we ran into some roadblocks, but they've done well to keep things moving, and we'll look for more to get done in 2021. Good. Mark.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chair. I guess through the agenda as well. Is there any kind of a timetable to roll out this information to the general public, press releases or anything like that to make some of this known? Obviously, I represent Woodstock, so you see if there's concerns about nitrate levels in the source drinking water that you might want to sort of throw up red flags and say, hey, is our water safe to drink? Or is the water safe to drink? That kind of a scenario, maybe that could be part of the answer to your question as well.
Yes, sure. Through you, Chair. Yeah, so typically we post this on our websites on May 1st. And generally each conservation authority, so the Upper Thames, the Lower Thames, and the St. Clair Region Conservation Authorities will promote it through their social media accounts. In some cases, we do press releases. It's up to the individual conservation authority. But typically each year I get calls from a few media outlets that have picked up on the release of the report and have a few questions. So we don't tend to do a huge rollout, but it generally gets picked up in a few places that those reports are now posted. In terms of the nitrate issue in Oxford, it is, so there's 2 well fields in the Woodstock system. Nitrate was identified as an issue for both of them. And then the next step is to identify an issue contributing area, which is an area where it's felt that nitrates are contributing to that issue, to that problem. And then additional policy was created to look at specifically activities that are contributing to the nitrate problem. So Oxford County has specific policies in their set of policies that are specifically addressing nitrates for Woodstock because they did identify an issue contributing area. And so their efforts to implement those policies are are aimed at trying to reduce that nitrate issue in their system. And so what we ask them every year is, you know, how effective has that policy implementation been? Are the nitrates being reduced in that system? And so far they're saying they don't have enough data yet to really know. And what they've said is they want to have kind of a number of years to look at it, but it is something they are reevaluating. The hope is that ultimately those policies will be effective, the nitrate issue will go away, and we can eliminate it as a drinking water issue. But for now, it's still there. But I should say that they are taking steps to treat it. So the drinking water is certainly safe to drink, but the nitrate levels in the raw water quality are a concern, and they're working on trying to reduce that.
As a follow-up, are both those wells south of Woodstock towards the so-called, what we generally want to call the Sweeberg Swamp, or Alan might want to refer to as Hodges Pond, in that general area as far as water source coming into the city of Woodstock? So where both of these wells are, municipal wells south of Wood City?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Tabor site is further south towards Sweeberg, and the Thornton site's more over by Sweeberg Road there, and there's county property between Sweeberg Road and so you're just west of Hodges Pond area there. So yeah, you're quite right, Mark. It's all in that area, and the city of Woodstock is certainly dependent upon that entire area of what the locals would refer to as Sweeberg Swamp, but it's certainly, I don't think people realize how important that is to the city of Woodstock. Sorry, Jenna, I don't know if you were going to add something to that.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from anyone? If not, okay, we have the motion on the floor. There's no further comments and questions. I'm going to ask Michelle to do the roll, please, and we'll have the vote.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, so that's carried. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you, Jenna. Appreciate all the work that you do in looking after the source water protection program for us. And as I said before, it sounds like you've got some plans for 2021, and let's hope that now with the won't be quite as disruptive as it was back in last year, 2020. And thank you for all your efforts, and wish you all the best for the upcoming year. There's nothing for business for information, so I don't think there's anything else. We just have item number 5, which is the adjournment. And I'll ask Brian to move adjournment of the Source Protection Authority meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We'll just take a minute now and we will reconvene as a regular board meeting. I think we're running a little bit behind schedule here, but hopefully we'll make up some time soon here. Michelle, have we lost anyone? Do we need to do the roll call again for this meeting?
I think it'd be good practice to do the roll.
Okay, it is a separate meeting. I think we should take a separate roll call. So I'm going to call the meeting to order for the regular board meeting for the month of April. And I will ask Michelle to do the roll call, please.
My cat just laid on my list. Marie Blosh,
Present.
Alan Dale.
Present.
Our report, we received regrets from Dodd Edmiston. Anna Hopkins.
Here.
Tony Jackson.
Yes.
Sandy Levin.
Here.
Here. Can't hear you. I think the cat's doing it.
Michelle got muted.
Hugh McDermott,
Here.
Paul Mitchell,
Here.
Anna Marie Murray,
I'm here.
Brian Petrie,
Still here.
Jim Reffel,
Here.
Joe Salter,
Here.
Mark Schadenberg,
Here.
Alex Westman.
Here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. We've got 14 still. Just a quick reminder to people, if anybody has any issues, I think host duties have now been transferred to Tracy. But if you have any issues, try and get a hold of Chris. If it doesn't work, get a hold of Tracy on the chat line. And we'll try and keep everybody connected.
If I can, Alan, through you, Chris Harrington was able to rejoin, but he has had some connection issues, so he keeps popping back in and out. So he's
Okay.
back on now, though.
Well, between Chris and Tracy, if anyone has any issues.
Yeah, and I am in, and I seem to be the issue today, so I'm not sure if I'll be a ton of help if you can get to me, but they are all set up, Michelle and Tracy, so you know if anybody needs to present, it seems to continue running even when I get, it seems YouTube and Zoom, there's an update that's, something's fighting, so I don't know why, but it should carry on without me, so.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind and hopefully we don't have any more issues with that. So first item we have is approval of the agenda. I'd like to point out that there is a slight amendment to this. And that is for item number 6.1. 6.1, we are going to amend the motion. We are going to remove the first part of the wording of that motion. It starts off by saying contingent on proof of a successful completion of Conservation Authority compliance training. And we're going to delete that part of the motion for the simple reason that late last week, we received confirmation that Brad Dryberg did in fact complete his training and pass the course. So it doesn't need to be contingent. We've now got the results. And so we can have the motion that we will go ahead and confirm him as a POA officer. So with that slight amendment to that motion, can I have a approval of the agenda as amended? Moved by Jim and seconded by Joe.
I so move.
And Joe?
Second.
Thank you very much, Joe. Okay. Any comments or questions then on that agenda? I don't see anything, so I'll ask Michelle to do the roll and we'll have the vote, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for today's meeting? Don't see or hear anything. Minutes of the previous meeting, that was March 23rd, 2021. Moved by Mark and seconded by Alex. You're willing to let your name stand?
I shall move.
I second.
Good, thank you very much. Any comments or questions all in the minutes from the last meeting? I don't see or hear anything, so that's the minutes dated March 23rd, including the closed session minutes. And if there's no comments or questions, I'll have the vote. If Michelle could do the roll, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Item number 4, business arising from the minutes. There were 2 items arising from the minutes from last meeting. The first was just a follow-up on the 2020 health and safety report. There was a question, and so we've received a report here to follow up on that. So first of all, can I get Marie to move that and Anna to second it?
So moved. And I second.
Good, thank you. So the report's there. Carrie Ramsey is available if there's any questions at all, but I think she's covered it pretty good. If there's any comments or questions, I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so I'm going to call for the vote. Michelle, if you do the roll, please.
Mary Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
So that's carried. Thank you. Item 4.2 is another follow-up. That was on Teresa's report with community volunteers. And we were a little disappointed about the fact that the pandemic has certainly disrupted our programs with volunteers. But we are following the stay-at-home orders and doing the best we can to comply with everything. And certainly hopeful that we'll have lots of volunteers and lots of interest when we're able to resume those programs. Reports there, moved by Tony and seconded by Sandy, if they're willing to let their names stand.
Sure.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Teresa is available if anyone has any comments or questions. I'm not seeing or hearing anything, so I'm going to call for the vote. Michelle, if you do the roll, please.
Mary Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie.
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And thanks again to staff for following up on those items. Appreciate that. Item number 5, we have no delegations for today's meeting. That takes us down to item number 6, a business for approval. First item is 6.1. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to amend the recommendation slightly by removing that first line because it is no longer contingent. We have received the results. So moved by Nancy and seconded by Hugh. Are you willing to let your name stand?
Yeah, moved as amended.
Thank you. Hugh?
Seconded.
Good, thank you. So any comments or questions at all there? Jen Howley is available for any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward. Summer is coming and the parks will be opening up and we'll need to have staff ready to go, and it's good to have an extra POA officer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have Brad with us somewhere on our
Sure.
files. So just a quick introduction. He would typically have attended the in-person meeting to introduce him to the board. Brad's our assistant superintendent at Piddock, and we did find out late last week that he received an excellent mark of 87 in the course. And he's also completed the use of force training, as well as he participated with the other POA officers in their training this spring that were both modified under the current pandemic situation. So
Very good. That's excellent news. So welcome, Brad. I'm just trying to find your screen here.
I don't know if I see anything, if it'll bump it maybe.
there you go.
Probably, yeah. Go ahead. So yeah, it's again, congratulations. Appreciate you taking the extra training and looking forward to having you with, doing a new role here at the UTRCA. So
Appreciate it. Looking forward to it as well.
good, good. So comments or questions? I think I had Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just maybe a clarification question to whoever wants to answer. It could be Brad, could be Jennifer, but just the idea of what Brad's role is. Does he still work full time at Piddock Conservation Area, or does he take on additional responsibilities outside of Piddock?
Everybody's job description has that other jobs as requested or required, but yeah, his main job is the assistant superintendent at Piddock, but he does assist with lands and facilities, enforcement, those sorts of activities.
Okay. Marie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Kind of a similar question. If you could just give me a general idea, perhaps through you to the staff, just in the number of officers that we have and the type of offenses, and maybe the number of offenses, just a general idea to give me a better understanding of what the offenses are.
Sure. So between myself and Alex's unit, the lands and facilities unit, we have, I believe, 15 provincial offenses officers who can enforce under the Trespass to Property Act. Offenses would be in the campground, anything from excessive noise to trespassing, I guess would be, but we typically don't handle the serious offenses. If it's something such as a domestic or something like that, we would be calling in for assistance from our local police force.
And I'll just add, Jennifer, is that's certainly the lands and facilities lens, but also, and that's specific to Section 29 under the Conservation Authorities Act, but under Section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act, we have Provincial Offences Act officers for the enforcement of our regulations there. So again, there's another 3 officers, and then we also have Provincial Offences Act officers for implementing the Clean Water Act as our risk management officials. So we get quite a number of different Provincial Offences Act, but all wearing slightly different hats and in different roles for what portions of the acts they're regulating for.
Good, thank you. Any follow-up, Marie?
No, thank you.
Okay, good. Don't see any other questions or comments. So with that, I'm going to call for the vote. And Michelle, if you do the roll, please.
Ray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Ann Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie.
Yeah.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Bussman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And once again, thank you and congratulations, Brad. To say, I hope you're have a busy summer, but not too busy. I anticipate we're going to have lots of visitors to our parks and lots of work, but hopefully we don't have too many issues. And wish you all the best and thank you. Next item is 6.2. This is the new proposed Conservation Ontario Governance, Accountability and Transparency Initiative. A lot of information that we had gathered and staff had pulled together for that report, and luckily we had it there. So Can I have Paul move that and Anna Marie second it, please?
So moved.
So seconded.
Good, thank you. Tracy, is there anything you want to add at all to that report? I think it's got quite a bit of info there, but anything you want to add?
Yeah, certainly, if I can. We probably provided way more information than any other conservation authority, partially because we had the information at hand, having had pulled together some of the history of our orders and councils and our participating municipalities representation over time. So thought, great background information, it's already prepared, we'll share it at this time. But just for context, although we have an order in council and that forms our membership agreement, other conservation authorities strictly adhere to the representation by population numbers that are spelled out in the Act. And yet there's others, CAs, that have made amendments to those population numbers by representation through resolutions and agreements with their member municipalities. So really this exercise was confirming with the minister what agreements we have in place and making sure we provide them. And of course, there was a deadline imposed by having them sent to the minister by April 3rd. And I can report back that just last week we did receive a confirmation that everything was received, and if there was any further questions, they would be following up. So again, just providing a little bit more context, because not all CAs are the same, and that's why it's very important for Conservation Ontario to kind of provide that oversight to track, you know, where we're at as different portions of the Act are proclaimed, ensuring that each CA has met with those requirements, and then being able to amalgamate those numbers and provide it back on as a conservation authorities as a whole, and the status report to the minister. So hopefully that helps, just to provide a little bit more background there, and recognize that as always, we appreciate the partnership that Conservation Ontario brings, and allowing CAs to act and have that one voice under their umbrella organizations.
Good, good. All right, any comments or questions at all for Tracy on this report? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So I'm going to call for the vote. Michelle, if you do the roll,
Wait a
please.
second, wait a second. And I'm trying to get my hand up there, Alan. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was trying to unmute and I'm a little slow this morning, but I didn't have my hand up. I should have
Okay,
my reaction hand. I'm not used to it, but
that's okay. Marie, I'll get Marie first, then come back to Anna.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this report. It's certainly complete, but I had a couple of questions about it, and one had to do with the appointments, because from at least for us in London, I believe our appointments run out at the end of this year. So I don't know how that would get interpreted, or maybe it's something to flag with the city, that if our appointments would need to be defined as continuing another year, or perhaps we would have to change. So I kind of just wanted to flag that issue.
I don't think that's true anymore.
It isn't?
I believe that was changed.
Okay, I'm not real sure. I just kind of, it popped up into my head and I just thought I would flag that as a potential issue. But then the other question that I had, it's a little scary to read what the minister can do and sending in an inspector, and perhaps that's the intent of that section, I don't know. But I was wondering, I know like with there's like with the ombudsman, there's certain fairness standards. I didn't know if there was anything that put some kind of, I mean, I know there's the Public Inquiries Act, but if there was anything that put any limits on what how the minister would conduct that, if that would have to be a hearing. So that was just another issue to kind of flag. I didn't know.
Yes,
I think the minister has a fair bit of powers. Tracy, could you explain that?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Again, through the chair, it is concerning, but to have that much power and really not a lot of guidance provided to what extent. But from my understanding, from what I'd heard, kind of the trigger was there from how to engage a third-party review, like the I always have a hard time with that word, ombudsman. But that was a challenging process because from what I understand with the Niagara Peninsula example, that there was some issues raised, but figuring out who would be that independent reviewer was a bit of a challenge at the time. So again, this will allow the minister to appoint someone. Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat, just waiting to hear a little bit more clarity on some of these powers that have been enacted. So as we find out more, I'm sure we'll be sharing more. And then in answer to your question, yeah, it is the appointments were shifted to align with the municipal elections. So the end of November in 2022, I think Sandy sent or can clarify that. And with those appointments, one of the first steps of the best management practices that were identified in the governance documents was that you're conferring with the adjacent CAs that have appointments in the same municipalities. So certainly was on the phone with Mark Peacock of Lower Thames just over a week ago, again, asking their question, because unfortunately they haven't had a representative in place. The spot has been vacant for the last 2 years. So wanting to make sure that we're bringing those issues together to a municipality where we have those shared boundaries and we can provide that clarity together. So, and certainly there's Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, and they're one of the ones that their membership by population is a little bit out of whack for the City of London. So they'll be making some changes there too. So the city is aware that there's these changes coming, but want to be providing that in a context where it's all the CAs providing the information at the same time.
Good, thank you. Does that answer everything, Marie?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we'll learn more as we go.
Yes, yes. Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the report. I think with all the changes to CAs, the more we get the information, the better off I know as a board member we are. So I really do appreciate it. I'm happy to support this recommendation moving forward. I do have just a couple quick questions as it relates to the recommendations and reading the report, and at the end, finding out that we really don't know what these changes will be. So my question through you to staff is around the challenges of implementing this and the concerns, if any, when it comes to costs or challenges to the authority.
Yes, through you, through the chair. That's the big thing that we've struggled with, because we recognize that there's probably much more administrative burden in establishing these agreements and to have this level of governance and accountability. So there's that side of it. But the other side of it, when I look through many of the recommendations about, posting and meeting agendas, minutes to meetings, having our fee schedules posted online, all those things are things that we currently do anyways. So, again, it's just that checklist to confirm that, yes, we're doing these things. This is about the governance and accountability piece. And I think we've made a great strides to be able to provide that information on our website. So certainly lots has been done already. It's the uncertainty about where those mandatory and non-mandatory programs will fit in and how those agreements will be structured moving forward. So until we see that, it's hard to really put a time frame on it. Maybe it'll be something that's very much templated and much more straightforward. So until we see it, it's hard to say, but I do recognize it'll be more administrative work for sure.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And so obviously we're not there yet as well. I do have another quick question, and I'm not sure if it can be answered or not, but I find the public is very unsure where to go with knowing there's changes out there. But I had an example of a spill in the London area, and the public trying to get through and realizing that it's not the authorities' I guess, decision when it comes to spills. And I'm just wondering if there's a better way that we can give the public information on responsibilities of the authority or not. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as we go through these changes.
Yes, through the chair, it spills is one of those things that, you know, we've always struggled with, because there is this expectation it's going to the Thames needs to know. And we do post that number on our website. You know, if calls come in, we do redirect. When emails come in, we do redirect. But I think it's just this, you know, it's not a bad thing that when people think of water quality impairment, they think of the Upper Thames. But we always coordinate very closely with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Sometimes even our staff are out sending some photos and passing that information along to the Spills Action Center or the environmental officers who are investigating. But ultimately, when it comes to those water quality impairments, the environmental officers have to be the ones taking the samples. It's a chain of custody regarding the evidence that's being collected, because if that was to lead to a charge, then it has to be those ministry staff providing that data, and based on their observations as the officers in charge. But certainly there is lots of coordination that happens, and know that it doesn't result in delay. Sometimes it's even our staff calling in the Spills Action Center and passing on that information. So very coordinated efforts.
Thank you for that. I think that's important information that can be shared with the public too, that even though the authority is not in charge, we can also pass on that information too. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, okay. Any other comments or questions at all from any board members? I'm not seeing anything now, so I'll call for the vote. And Michelle, if you could do the roll, please.
Maria Bloch,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Ryan Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
and Alex Westman.
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have item number 7, business for information. And 7.1 is the administration enforcement. It's a section 28 status report. Could I get Brian to move that and Jim to second it, please?
So move, Mr. Chair.
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions at all from anyone on the section 28 approvals?
I see Mark has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if waving my hand or getting that hand signal up under participants was the fastest way to go.
Yeah, the chat, the hand up feature works the best, I think. So go
As
ahead.
opposed to this feature. I guess 2 questions. First of all, I see the section 28 report comes from basically from Tracy's desk. I was wanting to know if she's going to continue to sort of be the final approval of these reports as we see them at the board of directors meetings every month, or somebody else going to be replacing her in that role? Does Tracy still have a desk in the basement, I guess is my question.
Well,
I'll let Tracy handle that one.
For the chair, I haven't moved my docking station upstairs yet, and didn't want to be doing that the morning before the meeting in case I messed up wires and didn't have IT support around to assist. So I just set up at my old spot. But certainly we've conducted interviews for the position and intend to offer a position to the Environmental Planning and Regulations Department this week. So there will be someone new signing these reports moving forward.
And I guess my follow-up, Chair, if I can ask a question, it's more of a generic thing, because sometimes you follow stuff in the news, whether it be TV news or the London Free Press or even something that's Woodstock news, and you kind of think, well, maybe how did that pass, or what's kind of the quick background on that? And my question, therefore, to whoever published the report is the Friends of Meadow Lily Woods, and they're attempting to stop a condominium project in the city of London. how far is that proposed property close to an ESA that they want to build a condo project on?
Yes, if I can through the chair, it is
Go ahead.
from what I've seen adjacent to the ESA. And certainly, yes, those are environmentally sensitive areas. Those areas are natural heritage features and identified in the City of London's official plan. But from a staff report at the city, and I'm sure Anna could add to this, but you know, those requirements for setbacks from those property boundaries and from the feature boundaries had been established. Now, when we're wearing our regulations hat, we're looking at the hazard features. So everything from your floodplains, steep slopes, wetlands, and areas of interference surrounding wetlands. So there wasn't a regulatory role in that application, but certainly our staff reviewed and provided comments looking at the broader landscape and ensuring that they would meet the provincial policy statements, objectives for natural heritage.
And I guess the flip side of that, maybe just a comment at the end, we talk about the ESAs and people wanting to build warehousing and floodplains and stuff like that we've seen around the province of Ontario and all that discussion. Well, obviously we've talked lots about it at the board level here, but the flip side of that being the provincial policy statement where it talks about intensification and using up lands that could be residential as opposed to gobbling up more farmland is the flip side of that. So it's sort of an ongoing tug of war between all those angles.
Yeah, and I would add, if I may, through the chair, the complexity is that we saw in Duffins Creek is that now there's a different tool that the province can use for minister zoning orders requiring CA Act permits to be issued even when they are within those hazard lands. And so certainly some of our CA counterparts in the greater Golden Horseshoe area are seeing huge amounts of time and staff resources to deal with those types of applications as they're moving through. And there's a great number of them from what we understand that are in the queue. They may not have the minister's zoning order in place yet, but that's something that Conservation Ontario has been tracking. And I guess we've been fortunate not to see them out in our area just yet, but know that they'll probably be coming as well.
Right, okay. Sandy, did you have a comment or a question?
No, Mr. Chair, Tracy addressed it.
Okay, good, thanks. Anyone else with comments or questions all on the Section 28 regulations? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So I'm going to call for the vote. Michelle, if you do the roll, please.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Next item we have is 7.2. It's the financial results from the first quarter of 2021. First of all, could I get Joe to second that or Joe to move it, sorry, and Mark to second that, please.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Good, thank you very much. So the report's there. Christine, do you have a few things you want to point out to us in the report? Oh, Christine's muted or?
I'm wondering if she was
I'm not seeing
disconnected.
Christine. She was there and she's not.
Yeah. Chris got kicked out again too, so I'm wondering. Oh no, he's come back in. So some technology issues today. Anyway, I'll just relay some of Christine's comments. I know you can see from the report there's some anomalies. Certainly, this is a challenge with a Q1 report so early in the year. We tend to be an organization that does more of our spending later in the year. As well, this is unique, and perhaps COVID is something that could prove as a benefit, was that now most municipalities are set up for electronic transfer of funds. So unlike previous years, we've seen almost all of our levy payments received by the end of March. That certainly has not been the case in previous years. So a few different anomalies because of that. But the report's provided, and if there's any more detailed questions, just let you know that the Finance and Audit Committee are meeting after this. So we can discuss with Christine and make sure any questions can be answered at the next meeting.
Right, okay, very good. Anyone have any comments or questions on this report? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So I'm going to call for the vote. Michelle, if you could do the roll, please.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray, Anne Marie,
Yes. Sorry, Michelle.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Okay, so that's carried. Thank you. Next, we have 7.3. And this is the properties for the Canada 1 target. It's a short report, but it's a long story because this is something that staff worked on a few years ago and put some effort into something, and we didn't hear back for a while, and now we've gotten a notice that pretty impressive that there was this pilot project. They were using this new tool to evaluate these properties. 46 properties submitted from across Ontario. Only 10 were selected, and 2 of them were ours. So that's pretty impressive there. So a couple of things we might want to give some thought, board and staff, as to how we want to recognize this achievement and how we want to build on it. So I'll leave that thought with you. First of all, can I get Alex to move the report, and second by Marie?
So moved.
And seconded.
Good, thank you. So we have Kathy Quinlan available for any comments or questions. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I think this is a good news story, and I'd just like to also add that London's ESAs have been submitted too, and I really am just really glad, and I think these are opportunities that hopefully we can kind of promote depending on what the results are. And maybe that's my question through the chair to staff, in particular with the ESAs that London has submitted. Will there be a report back, or sort of what's the follow through and the follow up to doing things like this?
Okay, Kathy, do you want to handle that, or who we got is going to look after this one?
I was going to suggest maybe Alex answer that one.
Sure.
Kathy can certainly chime in too.
Well, we started a bit of that, Kathy, and I think that's what Kathy was going to jump to, Tracy. Kathy, do you want to follow up?
Sure, through the chair. Thank you. You know, it's a complicated process, this Canada 1 targets process. You know, we dealt with a consultant for our own properties, and it was kind of a complicated table to fill out, and it has to go up the ranks from provincial to federal. Then we got notification that our properties were accepted. And in the meantime, London's
London jumped in and tried to get the ESAs recognized. And from what I've seen from correspondence, it has been recognized. So we just confirmed actually with Emily Williamson at the city this morning that we're going to put out a news release today or tomorrow and include that information about the London ESAs, and they're happy to see that information shared. So my understanding is the ESAs are approved just as our lands are approved.
If I could just follow up and when you say recognize, what does that exactly mean through this Canada One process?
Yes, very good question through the chair. So the Canada's through the Aichi target process, they committed to protecting 17% of Canada's land. So, you know, we've actually got more natural heritage cover than 17% across Canada, but in order to call it protected, they had to meet, lands have to meet certain criteria. You have to document that, you know, your lands are protected by policy or process, or the group holding the lands has long-term protection in mind for the property. So once you go through this process, it confirms that the lands being recognized are indeed protected for the long term, and they can count towards that 17% goal of Canada's lands and waters being protected. So it's kind of an accounting process. At the same time, it does give us one more thing to be proud of, and also to carry on with our protection work.
Good to hear. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, through you to staff, do we get notification of when it actually shows up in the mapping feature for this program? I was just looking at it the other week, and I didn't see Dorchester Swamp with the same symbol as, say, Kilworth Provincial Park had.
Through the chair, good question. You're more informed than I am, Sandy. So I haven't actually followed up looking at all the websites, but I know it's an iterative process. So they probably do a quarterly update, is my guess, something like that. But yeah, actually send me that link and I'll check on it too.
Okay, will do.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
good.
Chair.
Other comments or questions? Okay, well, if not, I'm going to call for the vote then to receive this report. Michelle, if you could do the roll, please.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. And once again, big thank you to Kathy and Alex and all the other staff that might have been involved with this. It's really, really good to see. And then, yeah, let's hope for some more promising results now that we've got the London properties also involved with this. So that's a good news story. Next item we have is 7.4, Mitchell Reservoir Vegetation Management presentation. And Chris Tasker is going to give us a quick presentation on the work that's being done there in Mitchell. So, Chris?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for this opportunity to speak to you about this. If you'll just give me a moment or two, I'm going to try and share my screen because it seems Chris is challenged at the moment. So hopefully I can share it from here. And okay, now I can't tell whether everybody can see that or not. I'm hoping that they can.
Yep,
Yes,
it's
we
there.
can.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. But I seem to have lost my notes. As soon as I shared it, I lost my view of the notes.
I think it's a full moon or something like that.
Okay, well, I'll just have to.
Can try, Chris. I'm here again, but
Well, it's
you
been
want to try?
It's been pretty unstable, so I'm thinking I'm better off to try and. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen now. Is that working for people?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, well, thanks for this opportunity to speak to you about this. The title slide, I'm showing two aerial photographs, and it's not really all that noteworthy, although the first one on the right-hand side shows the vegetation that established fairly quickly. You can see the construction site up in the top corner of it. This was pretty early in the construction schedule. And, in contrast to the previous aerial photography, which was probably taken slightly earlier in the year. But anyways, I'll move on to just give you a bit of background and then to talk about the issue and some of the options that have been considered and where we're at with it now and how we're moving forward. So the Mitchell Dam was left open for 2 years to accommodate the construction of the Henry Street Bridge that you saw at the upper or towards the upper end or middle upper end of the reservoir. You can see it in the distance in the photograph that I've included in the bottom right-hand corner with the vegetation that's established in this area between an island in the middle of the reservoir and the bank at a little park area that I was taking this photograph from. With the reservoir lowered, there was a substantial amount of vegetation. We had staff out to view the vegetation and as well to view the type of conditions that were there as far as the ground and soil type at the location in the reservoir. Often quite mucky, and that's what we found. A lot of different types of vegetation and expecting that it will continue to grow in 2021, either from the seeds or from the root system that's well established there. We were kind of hoping that the spring runoff to spring freshet would move some of the dead vegetation from over the winter through the system. But as you can see in this particular photograph, you can see the areas where the water has, in the foreground, where the water had laid the vegetation down and where it didn't even touch much of the other vegetation. So that wasn't really all that effective in trying to move some of this vegetation through the system. When the construction project was finished late last year, West Perth let us know that they'd like the reservoir brought up to its summer water level. And we indicated that it's difficult that time of the year to bring it up without a runoff event. And also would be challenged because we would then just have to bring it back down to winter water level. So we decided not to bring it up in the fall and hold off until spring, and that's where we are now. It was also discussed at the time and had been mentioned previously as part of the permitting process that a vegetation management plan was likely going to be needed. But really the amount of vegetation that established there so quickly was much more than anyone really had expected. We've even, with our past efforts to restore reservoir impoundment areas as part of dam removals, those restoration efforts haven't been as, I shouldn't use the word successful because it wasn't really intended that the vegetation established, but it definitely took root far faster than we've seen with some of our efforts to try and restore impoundment areas. The concern really is that the vegetation will, once submerged, would start to break down and decay. That decay would release nutrients, and the decay would also lead to reduced dissolved oxygen levels, and of course that can lead to fish kills. Concerned about the impacts in the reservoir, but also in the water that's discharged from the reservoir. So there's a bit of a balancing act there. We spoke to a lot of colleagues in other agencies looking for options that had been used, trying to understand the issues and the risks associated with them. Most people that we had spoken with confirmed the issue, but weren't really all that helpful in trying to identify the level of risk. It is important to understand that dissolved oxygen does tend to be to decline late in the seasons with the hot temperatures. It's not an unusual occurrence in the reservoirs, but with the amount of vegetation that had established and in its decay, we're concerned that situation would be far aggravated. The options that were considered, again, in discussing this with different agencies, also having discussions with West Perth, including the consultant for their bridge construction project. We identified a number of options and alternatives, but really weren't successful in finding one that was going to give us a high level of confidence. We considered a couple which would be considered sort of the do nothing alternatives. Just bring it up as normal, or don't, just leave it the way it is until we can come up with a way to remove the vegetation. Come up with a couple ways of killing the vegetation prior to bringing it up, and discuss lots of options for trying to remove the vegetation. But really there wasn't a lot of success in trying to figure an option that was actually implementable. The herbicide and burning were determined not to be appropriate. They would cause wouldn't solve the problem and would cause additional problems. Methods to remove the vegetation lacked a means to actually undertake them. It was beyond staff capabilities and sourcing of any equipment. The conditions were just too difficult to work in with the mucky conditions, and hidden or not obvious blocks, debris, and that sort of thing that could damage equipment or make manual or make walking through the area even difficult, much less with some sort of a cutting implement in hand. Drowning the vegetation was discussed, and that is something that Ducks Unlimited uses to manage vegetation around some of their ponds. Not sure whether it's to the extent of the vegetation that is established here. I suspect it's more being able to manage vegetation around the perimeter as opposed to the entire surface area of what is a very large reservoir compared to my experience with some of the DU ponds. So it kind of left us with not a real good solid alternative. But we did come to the conclusion that if we don't bring the water level up the spring, the problem is just going to get worse. It will mean there'll be more vegetation. We still don't have a way of getting rid of it and bringing it up in the fall or the fall subsequent year. Things would most likely be more challenging than they were currently. So we came to the conclusion that we should fill the reservoir as soon as possible before active growth. We've implemented, or we've started that process, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. We are in the process of developing a monitoring plan because we haven't been able to get rid of the vegetation. It's important that we be able to monitor it to determine whether it seems to be having an impact on the vegetation, or sorry, on the reservoir water quality, and develop a contingency plan should develop conditions to most likely draw the reservoir down, although we're still weighing the merits of what that contingency plan might be. Developing a communications plan is also important to make sure that the municipality, the local residents understand the situation, and most importantly, understand the uncertainties around the reservoir, the fact that it might have to be drawn down, and that they're probably going to be faced with this at least this year, perhaps next year, and possibly a couple of years as that vegetation continues to decay while it's submerged. So the current status, a couple of weeks ago, I'll start by what the normal process is. You can see the green line on the plot. On the top plot is when we would normally bring the water up by, and that's the end of April, the last week of April, give or take a week. Sometimes it's as early as mid-April, sometimes as late as the end of the first week of May. It's all pretty dependent on weather conditions. We currently have 2 gates closed, and the third gate is open 2 inches. It's really a very minor amount of opening, and of course, with a 24-foot wide gate, 11 feet high, it's very hard to try and control it down to a fraction of an inch, which is really what we need to do to be able to slowly bring the water level up. Instead, we're faced with having to get it to a setting like that, and then hope that rainfall and runoff will help us fill the reservoir. They were up about half the depth of the normal summer reservoir, as you can see in the close-up on the bottom slide. But as the conditions have continued to dry out, the inflow is going down, the water level has been dropping off as we have been waiting for the forecast rain that's been in and out of the forecast to actually materialize. Much of that seems to just get pushed off to later. We are seeing rain in the forecast and are still hopeful that we might get enough runoff to fill it, but that is a challenge, and it's a bit of a wait and see process at this point in time. Of course, as the watershed continues to dry out, it's going to be tougher and tougher to get it filled. The operators are standing by and ready to close the gate should we get it up over the weir, the middle weir, and can get that gate closed. But we are getting into a situation where we're looking at the conditions in the watershed and think we may be approaching a level 1 drought conditions. So it may present some challenges, but we're still hopeful that the rain that is in the forecast, at least some of it, might materialize, and hopefully in a location and in a distribution that's able to help get this reservoir filled. We are also challenged to get Wildwood full at this time, and although we've got lots of time still between now and when it's supposed to be up to its start of summer water level, if dry conditions continue to persist, we may be challenged to get it to its summer water level as well. So part of the plan was to bring it up and develop a monitoring and contingency plan. And I've identified the components of those. We are still working to develop both of these, both the contingency plan and the monitoring plan. The contingency plan most likely would be to draw it down. If it is drawn down, we want to remain committed to trying to get it back up again as soon as flows and conditions allow it to, because we don't want the vegetation to continue to grow further. As far as the monitoring plan is concerned, we've had some experience with doing real-time reservoir monitoring programs. Usually our dissolved oxygen programs in the reservoirs are done manually at preset locations and at various scheduled times. But because of the nature of this, real-time monitoring was determined to be more appropriate. And by hooking it up to our own data loggers, we hope to be able to put some alarms on those those so that we're able to get notified when conditions are deteriorating. Part of the work from West Perth consultant will be to try and establish what those conditions might be, and also to look at balancing the implications to the fish in the reservoir or the species at risk downstream, which is definitely a more significant concern for us. Part of that I'd mentioned as well is a communications plan, and we're working with West Perth to establish that. You see an article in the Mitchell Advocate about the time of the Mitchell Council meeting, where their CAO was interviewed, and we've got the notes from that, and had some discussions about the messages, so that we're consistent with the municipality on those messages, and we're working to establish a broader communications plan with the help of our communications staff that has the regular components of a communications plan that I've listed on the screen here. So I think that brings me to the end of the slides, and I guess if the chair would like, I'd be available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Certainly it's a challenge every year for staff when we have too much water, and this year we have the challenge where we just haven't had the precipitation and didn't have the runoff like we thought we would. So it's a whole different set of challenges. First of all, can I get a motion from Anna and seconded by Tony to receive this presentation?
I move.
So seconded.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any comments or questions from anyone for Chris? Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Chris, do you think this, even the vegetation dying off, how long a problem do you see that being? Is this a short-term problem of 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, or should it clear up quite quickly? What is your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question, and I wish I had an equally good answer to it. I don't think anybody's been able to answer that particular question, not to my satisfaction anyways. You know, it may not be a problem. We expect that it will, but how long will it be depends on how long it takes for that vegetation to deteriorate. We don't have anybody on staff that was able to give us any sort of indication. It's not something we have experience with. And even our colleagues in other agencies who we reached out to didn't have a definitive answer on that sort of thing. The consultant is helpful, but still not able to provide us with a definitive answer on that. So that's why we were saying, you know, it might be something that we struggle with for the next few years. I don't expect it would be much more than that, but it's really not something we'll have a good handle on until we get into it and we see how the monitoring goes. And again, weather is very important for this as well. Hot, dry weather going to aggravate the situation.
Okay. Any follow up at all, Brian? Are you okay?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you. Tony, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess understanding the targets and areas or temperatures of concern and dissolved oxygen limits that might trigger an action or a reaction to the conditions. So thinking about this compared to other pond areas, let's talk about Lake Victoria and Stratford, for example. So would you run a parallel comparison between other areas such as Lake Victoria? And I guess my question is, understanding that dissolved oxygen and temperature regimes might be similar in other areas, would you respond in the same way in those areas? In other words, if you had to open the dam up again in Mitchell under a certain set of conditions or criteria, if those same conditions or criteria were exhibited in other areas, such as Lake Victoria, would you also respond in the same way, or are you treating them as individual cases and with different management strategies?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may try to answer that as best possible. Again, I'm not the person to speak on the water quality aspect of things, and my strengths are more in the maintenance of and operation of the dams. But we have not in the past considered drawing down a reservoir because of degraded dissolved oxygen. We have historical measurements which have been provided to the consultant and will help inform some of the plans as we go forward, the contingencies, as I spoke to it. But we've had situations where dissolved oxygen has been low, both in Mitchell Reservoir before, and drawing it down wouldn't have been considered in the past. The reason we're considering it here is because we're not sure what the vegetation will do to things. That to me is a considerable difference over the conditions, as you mentioned, in Lake Victoria, where that vegetation has not been allowed, or in the past at Mitchell Reservoir, where that vegetation has not been allowed to establish because it has been brought up each and every year.
So is the concern mostly for the area above the dam or for the impact to the water system itself?
The concern seems to be more around the reservoir water quality and the impact that it might have on the fish that find that area as their home when it does have water in the impounded area. Again, it's drawn down each year, but during the summer there are fish that are present, warm water species, and so that seems to be the biggest concern. But we also don't want to risk impacting things downstream as well. A bit of a balancing act that we'll have to undertake there.
And through you, Mr. Chair, is that dam used for flow augmentation to the rest of the watershed downstream?
No, not in any large degree. There is no storage set aside in any of the small reservoirs for flow augmentation. The only two with specific storage that's filled in the spring to be able to be drawn down over the summer and fall are Wildwood and Peddock. Now, there has often been suggestion that the smaller reservoirs had some merit for flow augmentation, but really it comes down to the fact that the inflow is quite low in the middle of the summertime, often to the point where you might have seen in one of my photos where there's no water flowing over the weir. So the only water being released from the dam is that which is leaking through the seals and through the gates. And so because you're seeing that water level come down, there is a very minimal flow augmentation that would be realized downstream, but it's not operated in that way. And it's not, there's no storage that's specifically set aside to, like there is at Wildwood and Peddock, to be drawn down for flow augmentation. And there aren't the type of discharge controls at the dam that would even allow for that controlled flow augmentation. Sure.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good, thanks. Any other comments or questions for anyone? Okay, if not, I'm going to call for the vote then to receive this presentation. Michelle, if you could do the roll, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Scheidenberg,
Yes.
and Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. And again, thank you very much, Chris, for that presentation. We'll hope it all works out for the best, and I'm sure you'll be keeping an eye on it, and you can keep us updated on how that develops. Let's hope it doesn't cause us too much problem down the road. But interesting problem we have there. Number 8 is the April 2021 4-year information report. Lots of spring activities taking place there. Big thank you to staff. They're out trying to do some tree planting and other programs that they would do in the spring. And certainly it's still a challenge with the pandemic. And as we saw earlier in our report, we don't have our programs with volunteers up and running. So it's made it difficult, but staff are adapting well. Item number 9 is other business remarks. I have a couple of items. First of all, regarding the audit committee and the audit itself. We did the report there on the first quarter results, and Christine was not available. She lost her internet connection. So she is on her way into the office. And so the Finance and Audit Committee will meet at 12 noon. We're going to start that meeting at 12 noon, and Christine will be able to join us. So hopefully, we'll say apologies to anyone who had questions for Christine on that first quarter report. If you have any follow-up with that, just let Christine know and she can get back to you on that. Also, the audit committee will be dealing with the audit today at our meeting, but I just want to inform the board that we had originally said that Deloitte would be signing off on our audit. That was our understanding. Deloitte had started the audit. They then sold a portion of their business to MNP, and they would no longer be able to do our audits going forward, but this one they would. Apparently that wasn't the case. The business deal between the two of them was that MNP would take over as a certain date and would take over all activity. That's not what we were told. And unfortunately now we're finding this out. So Deloitte will not be signing off on our audit for 2020. It will in fact be MNP. And the audit committee has a number of questions about that, but that's something we'll be dealing with. But I just wanted to give the board a heads up in case you're wondering when you do see the audit come forward, you'll be wondering what's going on, but we can certainly have some discussion about that when the audit is complete and presented to the full board. As I said, audit committee will be meeting at 12 noon. Conservation Ontario met a virtual meeting a couple of weeks ago. Very busy meeting. It was Ian's final meeting, and they had some nice words of thanks for Ian and all his work over the years with Conservation Ontario, work he had done with the Conservation Ontario University. And so that was good to see. And of course, it was Tracy's first meeting at Conservation Ontario, and Tracy was no stranger to many of the people there, but they had an introduction for Tracy. We had the new elections for the board members of Conservation Ontario Board and a number of committees that are set up and staff that are involved. Pleased to announce that Brandon Williamson, one of our staff, is the new representative on the Ontario Invasive Plants Council. So congratulations to Brandon, and certainly wish him well and thank him for becoming involved in this initiative. Conservation Ontario, as I said, has a number of committees using CA staff from across the province, and our staff have been involved over the years, so it's good to see that continuing. That's all I have for comments. So Tracy, I'll turn it over to you for a few comments.
Sure. Thank you, Alan. Yes, also from the Conservation Ontario's AGM, the working group was able to provide a little bit of an update. Not any details and specifics, just because of their non-disclosure agreements. But generally, they had indicated that the work of the working group has been significant. You know, there was always this fear, since we haven't really heard anything, and expected some results by the end of March, that maybe things had stalled. But instead, it's quite the reverse. Hassan Bassett, who is chair of the working group, indicated that they've been having 2 to 3 meetings per week, and usually the minister was partaking in one of those meetings each week as well. So again, there's been tremendous engagement through the stakeholders as well. And it's been progressing quite well. He just said that this delay is not something as a negative. Look to the positive, because you know, it's really indicated that more analysis and more detail were needed in order to go through this process. And so they're taking the time, which I think we can all appreciate. He also mentioned the next couple of phases of the rollout of the working group's work. There will be a public consultation, and the consultation period is expected to be 60 days. Again, that's good news. In the past, we've seen commenting periods very reduced, you know, 30 or 45 days, or through omnibus bills. So I think everyone could see that as a positive as well. And the first phase is really focusing on including those definitions and categorizations, again, of those mandatory and non-mandatory programs. That will really be the key piece, whereas the second phase will follow up and include the language that will be used to develop the regulation. The phase 2 isn't the regulation itself, but really framing how the regulation will be rolled out. So again, I think that's good news to hear that so much progress has been made, and the time is being taken to elaborate on conservation authorities and the province willing to listen to all of our areas that we provide input to assist our municipalities in. So a follow-up from Ian's remarks from last meeting as well was that we were at the time had a meeting planned with MECP and MNR regarding our wildwood and our operations of wildwoods in response to some of the discussions with the town of St. Mary's and the St. Mary's Golf Course. So it was at the time, it was Ian, myself, and Chris Tasker participating in this meeting. And we felt it really went well. We had provided a number of background documents in advance of the meeting so that ministry staff could have a broader understanding of the issues, and we could really focus the time on the discussion. And really just relaying kind of our concerns as well. You know, there are certainly the golf course is experiencing impacts, but then balancing those needs against all the various users of the wildwood, and not just for, you know, the flood control aspects, but also those flow augmentation. So again, looking at a more broad understanding of wildwood, its uses, and the many users of those facilities and of the water. So it was suggested that MNR, being the lead when it comes to our flood operations, take the lead in establishing a third-party type review. MNR functions as a resource and manages a number of structures themselves, more in Northern Ontario. But we also suggested the idea that in Southwestern Ontario, the Grand River Conservation Authority has similar structures, and perhaps they could be a third-party reviewer as well. Again, this was an opportunity really for the ministries to gather information, to take that back, and then consider what the next steps are. So we are waiting to hear back from the ministries about next steps. One thing that we did notice the following week, even, the woman, I don't know if many have heard of her, but Kelly Katona, she was our Director of Conservation and Source Protection Branch. She sent out an announcement that she had changed ministry. She's now with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So that took place April 1st was when she was transitioning to that new role. So we'll have a different director in place. So perhaps we'll have to await for the new director to be in place before we find out those next steps are. And I guess the last thing I'd like to mention is our conservation areas. Certainly with the stay-at-home order, we've delayed our openings, but we're hopeful that once the stay-at-home order is lifted, May 20th, or even some amendments to what's being allowed, that our parks will be open for seasonal camping and day use time. So that's the hope, but also just a reminder to members that you have your swipe card to gain access. And if you don't have a swipe card, certainly touch base with Jennifer and she can get you one. And also encourage everyone to go out and enjoy our parks and take a tour. If there's more information or a more detailed tour, certainly let Jennifer know, and one of her superintendents or assistant superintendents can line up a visit and show you around. I'm sure they'd happy to show off their places. And I think that's pretty much all I have. I'm just considering that we had quite a few technical glitches. Maybe we should consider not having meetings when there's a full moon. I think that might be one of the issues, but I think we're all back now and we can continue on. So thank you.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Tracy. And yeah, it might be a little bit of a bad omen for your first meeting as GM, but let's hope that we got this one out of the way and it was smooth sailing from here on in. So nothing for item number 10. There's nothing for closed session today. That just leaves us with item number 11, which is adjournment. Sandy, would you like to adjourn the meeting, please?
So moved.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your patience today. As was mentioned, we had a few technical issues, but certainly got through it. So thank you. Appreciate it. And the audit committee will be meeting in 15 minutes time. So take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.